Hi everyone. Today we continue our study on physiological factors that affect literacy development. Today we will look at how health, cognition, and mobility affect literacy development. Let's define the key terminologies for today's lesson. Health. Health is the overall well-being of a person. Health relates to the state of wellness of both the mind and the body. Cognition. Cognition refers to how a person views things and the overall thought process and ability to think out things, even as one uses the senses to explore one's environment. So cognition is all about how you look at things, how you perceive things. It's how you think about things, and it's how you go about thinking about things, even as you use your five senses to just explore whatever is happening within your environment. So we form conclusions based on our experiences, and we experience our world through our five senses mainly. Okay. Mobility. Mobility refers to the ability to move and to do so freely and easily. So when we're talking about mobility, we're talking about movement. How free are you to move around within your environment? Health, cognition, and mobility play critical roles in child development, and their impact on literacy development is often interrelated. So when we're looking at literacy development and we're looking at the physiological factors, we always have to consider the health of a person, and the health of a person also affects how they view things, and health also affects how they move about in their environment generally. So we're going to look at these three areas and how they are connected and how they all come together to affect literacy development. Bear in mind, as we said, at the core of literacy development is language development. General physiological conditions affect motor development, and together they influence language development. And I want to leave this thought with you. A healthy body produces a healthy mind. A healthy body produces a healthy mind. A healthy child will be happy, active, and full of life and progressive. A healthy child has a wholesome personality, is motivated to explore within the environment, and will also have a desire to learn. Poor health, on the other hand, especially if it is severe and for a prolonged period, particularly during the first 2 years of life, poor health slows down the rate of speech development. If a child is physically unwell, the mind is affected, and within the first 2 years of life, a child would not yet have gained those skills necessary to will the mind to be well, even if the body is well. So bear in mind, children are not like adults who will say, my body is not well, but I'm going to speak to my mind and be positive. No, a child is not like that, especially at age 2 and below. They have no control over how the mind will process what the body is experiencing. Here are some ways in which illness can affect language development. 1. Illness can cause a toddler to be separated from others, and hence they will not get the opportunities to learn to speak. And remember, we would have looked at sociological factors, and we say that children need to have engagement with others in order to develop their language and literacy skills. 2. If a child feels unwell most of the time, there will be little or no enthusiasm to talk and communicate with others. So if the child is able to speak, but is physically unwell otherwise, there will be no enthusiasm. They will not even care about speaking. The mind of the sick child is saying, I just want to get better. Until then, I'm not in the mood to speak with anyone. 3. A sick child may become withdrawn. Even some medications may cause a child to become weary and withdrawn. And the weariness alone will cause a child not to bother to move, not to bother to think too deeply on things, and not to bother to speak. A sick child may lack self-confidence. It may cause a child to have no spontaneous desire for self-expression. So you might be saying, come, just dance a bit to the music and you will feel better. No, the child is sick. So the child is saying, I cannot move right now. I don't feel confident doing anything that you're asking of me. And I will definitely not be expressing what is in my mind because I know that I'm not feeling well. Some physical ailments limit a child's ability to move, and once mobility is minimal, one cannot fully experience one's environment. So, if the child is not able to move around freely, that child will not be able to fully experience what is happening in the environment. Language learning is enhanced if one is able to move around in multiple environments and not just be in a fixed zone. So some persons will say that it would be good that if a child is unwell, that the child has a television screen before him or her, a screen that has movement. So if they are able to watch people going and coming and movement, it could help. But there are other persons who said no, it will just cause the person to be more withdrawn when they realize that other people are able to move freely and they cannot. So you just have to know your child and understand what works best for your child whenever your child is sick to the point that they cannot move around. Some physical ailments affect how the brain processes information. Speech development and cognition are both massive neural functions. So, if the physical ailment affects the brain, then naturally the brain will not be able to receive and send the information signals as how it ought to. So speech development and even the child's ability to think out things will be affected depending on the physical ailment. For example, slightly deaf children and children who are hard of hearing may have slow speech development if early medical intervention is not done. It will take them a longer time to meet certain developmental goals. If a child does not start his first word by the requisite time, then his ears and vocal cord should be examined by a specialist. Now, there are some persons who will say, let's estimate and wait until age 1. If the child has not called a word clearly by age 1, then get them checked out. Some will say age 2. So if you realize that the child is not making any attempts to make words, then that is cause for concern and the child may need to be checked out by a specialist. And if by 18 months old that child is still not making any words, then you have to get that child checked out. A child who is early in speech is often above normal in IQ. Mentally alert young children usually talk early. They also understand or comprehend early what is communicated to them through language. So we just have to try and facilitate as best as possible the early speech development. On the other hand, illness can cause a delay in speech. We have to be careful, however, of considering a child as being dull or slow in learning or unwilling to learn, for the child's behavior may just be due to him or her being unwell. So we can't just say, this child has a serious speech disorder. No, the child might just be sick. And bear in mind that a child may be unwell simply because his or her body is not being properly nourished through food. So you can't just say, this child is not speaking as yet, there's a serious speech disorder. No, check it out. Is it a case where the child is just not energetic because he or she is not being fed enough, or is being fed but being fed the wrong foods, so it's affecting how the body processes the food and in turn the mind is being affected? We have to check on these things and be careful how we label a child as being dull, about being boring, about being slow in learning, or being unwilling or lazy to learn, because it could mean that the child is just unwell. Even the simple things of worms in a child's body, worms in a child's stomach, that alone can cause a child to be so lethargic, moving about so weak and weary, and it will altogether affect their learning. So we have to be careful how we label children, as we say, because everything matters where child development is concerned. The physiological conditions will affect the conditions of the mind, and the mind will also affect one's willingness to move around. So, you can be able to move, but just because you are not nourished properly, your mind might be telling you, don't bother to move. So let's just cater to our physiological needs of our children so that their minds can work well and so that they will be able to fully experience their environment and develop as literacy learners.